Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are tuning in from or if you are catching us on replay. This is The Awesome Journey, and I am your host, Kelle Steinecke, along with my co-host in care, Christy Howard. And today is extra exciting, you guys, because we were starting the beginning of the year with some inspiration to the next level with our guest today, who is, and I can't say back because it didn't happen. We had some very severe technical issues at the very beginning of the year, and we had to reschedule our guest, Neal Foard, today, which we could not be more excited about. And we just had some great talk before we came on, too. Neal is the principal of StoryFire, and he is award-winning marketing and advertising guy, and which, of course, you all know me. I'm going to geek out over all of this. And I was just saying beforehand, and it's truth, if I were to receive like horrific news, I want Neal Foard delivering it to me because he has the most soothing way to say things and just is incredible. And you're going to find that out today. And I will encourage everyone to please connect with him on social media. And follow. He has the best shorts. I'm telling you, so many great things. You're gonna feel stuff, and because it's
not shorts. Right.
Short videos. Yes. We're not going short. I mean, granted, it's a look, I guess, but not the one we're going for today. Video shorts. They're incredible because they make you feel, and that's what we all want. So we can spend as much time with you today as possible, Neal, because it's taken almost 2 months to get you back on.
Thank
you for your patience in getting back. I will turn it over to my co-host in here, Christy Howard.
Oh, Neal, we got you on.
It took some doing, but I'm actually happy that we delayed Christy and Kelle because we can talk about it maybe at the end, but it took me a while to put together my StoryFire online course, and now it's ready. So
there you go.
Wouldn't have been if we had gone before. So this helps me plug it.
Well,
love it.
Yeah, and we wanted you to start as the our New Year's baby, but it's Kelle and I. But going back to, I had posted today that when I have a bad moment, and yes, I actually do, people, I do go up and talk to Fred in my head. I just go over to YouTube and listen to it and just go, okay, that's a good short. Now I can just keep on going into life.
I appreciate that. It makes me feel good that you use me as an analgesic.
Yes.
Well,
a painkiller.
I thought men like being used. Oh, that's sorry.
They do. It's true.
Oh, that's another show. Yeah.
So I want to do a quick shout out to Tom.
Yes.
Tom and Dan have another. That's another podcast off of YouTube, but it's called Golden Shields.
Love it.
I dig into that one. And then Jeff is our buddy.
We love Jeff.
Yes. So we appreciate you guys giving us a support and tell us how you even got into. I mean, I know that your father.
That's
stories and stuff like that. But tell us your story, your awesome journey.
My awesome journey. First of all, my compliments on the name of your podcast and your show, because that's the nub of our existence. Is we're all on a journey.
Amen.
And just the fact that you acknowledge that this is what's going on. We're here to enjoy each other's company. We're here all kind of going from here to there. And the best thing to do is I have a quote behind me that you can't see at the moment, but it's from Voltaire. And it says, life is a shipwreck, but we must remember to sing in the lifeboats. And what I love about that is, it's true. You can, there is no greater decision to be made than to just be in a good mood. Just make that commitment. And the way I happened to get into stories was a little bit like this. And this is no joke. I am old enough to have been, a teenager back when there was no such thing as a VCR or a DVR, right? So if Saturday Night Live really was live and you had to stay up to see it, and it would run from 11:30 on Saturday nights on the Pacific Coast to 1 a.m. And when I was about 11, let's see, when I was about 15 or 16, my family was not going to stay up to watch it. So it was my job to tell them what happened the night before. So on Sunday mornings, I would basically perform Saturday Night Live.
Oh my
And that was what got it started, was that I would do the jokes. Um, the nicest compliment I ever got years and years later from my sister Lily was that she happened to see one of the skits from about 1976, and she goes, yours was funnier." And so, um,
fantastic.
when I was that age, I was, I could do accents better. But anyway, that got me started on a kind of it was a sort of addicted, you get addicted to the family laughing. And so I just started noticing, there were times when I would listen to a Monty Python record or a Richard Pryor album and just memorize whole sides. And
Those were great
oh
comedians.
my
Oh my
God,
gosh.
I don't know that Richard
Like,
Pryor has ever
nobody
been
got
equaled.
offended because they were the best.
Well, speaking of which, I had the opportunity to actually go see Don Rickles live with my
Oh,
spouse. We got front
He
row
was a
seats
class.
at, I think it was the Orleans or the Rio or something, and we got front row seats, and he went after me, and I just thought, this is glorious to have Don Rickles ridicule you in public. Who knew? A highlight of your life, right? But, oh my God, he was merciless. And somehow you just always knew it was a loving, he was just making fun of the fact that people don't get along, right? I don't know. Anyway,
right.
but to finish the story, just the way that I really became what I became, um, such a fan of storytelling was that I got into advertising. And it turns out I didn't have quite the creative chops that a lot of the other copywriters and art directors had. I just didn't have as good as ideas. But what I could do is I could bring them to life with that old Saturday Night Live training. And
That's
that gave me the opportunity to wind up representing other people's work. And then eventually, working as trying to get new business. And the great pitch was always the big thing, when you had to
Mhm.
present your ideas to new clients, whether it was Samsung in Korea or Heineken in Amsterdam. And that was the great pleasure of both professionally and personally, spiritually, it was to go and try to get the big wins. And it was just like being on the breakfast table on Sunday mornings, like you're just eager to have people respond. And, if you do things enough times, you get enough reps in, literally thousands of presentations. It's sort of, you don't even know you're going to school, but that's what it turned out to be, was I was learning lessons about how to tell stories efficiently and for maximum impact.
I love that.
So how do you go where you like, because on your shorts, not the ones that you're wearing, though I think it's cold in California, I don't know. How do you go and pick a subject and then bring the story to it? And then, I mean, again, everybody go over them to his YouTube, but to understand that, okay, I've got this story and now I'm going to pull it around to, real life. And
I'll tell you what I'm looking for. This is what I'm always on the hunt for, is when people do nice things for each other. Because I believe we live in an age where our media tends to enrage us. It
Mhm.
tries to tell us we're surrounded by enemies, people are out to get you, and everything's awful. But my personal experience is that people are a lot more courteous and friendly, and across
Mhm.
the political spectrum, despite what they are being told. Turns out
Exactly.
Turns out we're all kind of within that one standard deviation on the bell curve of cool. We're all pretty cool. Yeah, we have bad days, and and we say stupid stuff, but by and large, people are pretty cool. And the statistic I often pull out from your own experience, and you guys know this is true, which is you'll be driving along the road and some jerk will do something stupid, brake check you, or they'll change lanes in front of you with no regard for your safety. And you're thinking, what a jerk. Everybody's a jerk. But in fact, and here's the stat, if you counted the number of cars around you when that happened, it's in the thousands. And there was one jerk. So that's a pretty good batting average. that one or two, and I'm pretty sure I just passed by 10,000 people behind the wheel, and we are all getting along, and we were all pretty courteous. And, people will let each other into, they'll let them zipper into traffic. And those odds are actually kind of my own personal experience, which is it's really rare when somebody's a real tool at Home
And
Depot.
interesting because I used to, and granted, I started practicing this later in life, is the jerk. Now, granted, when I have my blinker on and I'm trying to get over, I learned to drive in LA. So even though you're going to try to not let me in, I'm still getting in.
Yeah.
But when they try to block you, that does annoy me. But when people cut you off, I got into the place where I'm like, you know what? I don't know what's going on in their head or in their life. Maybe they're trying to get to the hospital. Maybe there's so many scenarios. We have no idea what's going on in that person's head. So our reaction is our own. And then the other thing that I used as an example was I listen to K-Love most of the time, which is Christian music. And it's very peaceful and relaxing. And so I'll just turn up my radio when I'm sitting in traffic and just kind of go with the flow and enjoy the music. But when you see that one car out of the thousands that's weaving in and out, and I'm like, that's what's going on in that person's life. Like that's how they're living. You're weaving, but you're not going any farther than I am. I just am sitting here enjoying the move forward. So yeah, it's so fascinating how that is. And I think even to take storytelling to the next level, because what you do so masterfully, and I say this with the utmost respect as a marketer, because so many people don't understand about storytelling in the emotional aspect of it. It's like, hey, it is more about, and we were talking about this a little bit before we came on. It's marketing isn't just about the words; it's the words that are heard or how they're heard. And I'll let you explain that a little bit more because it's about how it makes me feel, and you have again masterfully have this just as a gift that
Thank
you
you.
make people feel, and it does. It's your cadence, it's the whole thing. And I just want to make a little plug. SNL was funny back then.
There have been
I think that's the last time I saw it was with John Belushi.
There have been some magnificent seasons. Like, do you remember there was Mike Myers and Eddie Murphy and Chris Farley and Dan oh my God,
so good.
Right? And I mean, it's a murderer's row of talent, and every once in a while you'll get that chemistry. Nora Dunn and gee, I wish I could remember her name, but there were these two gals that used to do the Sweeney Sisters. Anyway, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because I'll go all day. But there are levels of genius that will pop up every now and again, and you're just like, I can't get enough of these people. Dan Hartman, what was his name? Phil Hartman.
Oh
Phil
yeah,
Hartman
yeah. Oh yeah,
just
what
a
a
genius.
tragic story he was.
But anyway, I'm sorry for taking us down that path.
A lot of them are.
But anyway, so can I go back to something you were saying about before, which was the bit about like
no.
Christy, I love you.
Seriously?
You're great. The sentiment is it's not important what you say. What's important is what people hear.
Yeah.
And as you know, the words will come with inflection. You know what trouble we can get into with text messages or emails, right? Because they don't hear your tone of voice.
Right.
And so oftentimes you'll be completely misinterpreted. I will sweat over emails before I send them because of mistakes I've made in the past. And what you always want to do is don't allow yourself to rise to the bait of feeling like somebody's insulted you, because I'll bet you almost half the time you're misreading what their intention was. And so you don't respond with hostility. But again, I want to preach this kind of evangel, if you will, which is the stories that I'm telling almost never are about the bad experiences that I've had. They are about the pleasant surprise of how cool people are most of the time. And there was an experience that I had recently of, I didn't expect this, but I posted a video to LinkedIn and to YouTube, but I did it mostly for the LinkedIn crew because LinkedIn is actually my favorite of all the social media. It's sort of the last place where people don't troll each other. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx it, but most of the time the comments are pretty cool. And the reason they're pretty cool is everybody recognizes when you're on LinkedIn, man, you are a traceable entity, right? Like people are going to
Mhm.
look you up. And
Yep.
so if you ever want to interview for a job or you want to raise business, they're going to find you on LinkedIn and they're going to look at what you've posted. And if it turns out to be troll-like or negative, they're going to go, I want no part of you, right? They're not there. They're there to network on LinkedIn. So they're on their best behavior. They treat each other more like if we were in person. And what I wanted to do was I had an encounter in a Delta Airlines lounge in Salt Lake City where this woman who was tidying up, they're going around, they're picking up trash and cleaning up tables and stuff. And she was just so sweet natured that we wound up talking about social media. And this conversation went on for quite a while. And after about, what must have been a good solid 10, 15 minutes, I said to her, oh my God, I hope I'm not getting you in trouble, for pulling you away from your job. And she goes, no, my boss loves it when we talk to guests like this because it makes the guests feel welcome. And the vibe is sort of all over it. Even just somebody watching me talk to you, they feel better because it's like, oh, you're allowed to do this. And I thought, that's brilliant that they accept that, because you guys may know that who in Disneyland is the most frequent person asked for directions. Do you know who it is? It's the
The
maintenance.
trash man.
It's the trash
The
people.
garbage.
It's the
Yeah,
garbage
the
people.
guy that cleans the garbage. Because they're always around.
But it's always around, and they don't feel embarrassed to ask that person. So Disney knows that only too well. And so the people that are cleaning up the trash are actually highly trained
But they're paid
navigation.
super well, or they used to be back in the day. My first job was Six Flags Magic Mountain. I grew up north of LA. And we would go to Disneyland on an occasion and we would, change badges with Disney people. That was part of the jam. I never found one because nobody spelled Kelly the same way. But in any event, PSAs, the trash people, because they were on roller skates, they probably still are. Um, they they made like 3 times as much as we did an hour because they were union. But it's
Yeah.
also you could eat off the ground of that place. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't do
There's a
it.
lot of, right. There's a
They
lot of
worked
pride at Disneyland.
hard.
Yeah.
They were not slackers.
But I just appreciated the fact that Disney understood that if
Yes.
they're going to ask the trash people for directions, you should probably train them to answer that question. And what's
Yeah.
more, they're so careful to be sweet natured and try to improve your experience. Like they in any interaction at Disney, their job is to leave you happier than when you walked up, and they're really good at it because they're all performers, right? They call them cast members. They don't, right? Right. Well, in any case, when I was at the Delta Lounge, I was so impressed that they had empowered this woman to improve my afternoon. It was, because you're waiting in the lounge, you're waiting, you're killing time, and it makes the time go like that when somebody's engaged with you. Well, so I posted. Oh, and then I heard that the CEO, 𝒘𝒆𝒏𝒆𝒚 of Delta, had just announced they were going to give their employees a $1.4 billion bonus taken from 2023 profits. And I thought, that figures. That's a company that when they say they value their employees, they kind of do. So I posted this video.
It's a rarity right now.
I posted this video, and I was really just doing it just as kind of my jam, to say, hey, that's worth celebrating. That's good. Only to discover that Delta people came out of the woodwork to say, yep, that's us. That's the way we operate.
Cool.
And so they were very proud of their company. And that was very encouraging. I thought, oh, good. Then it's not accidental.
No, that speaks volumes so that they understand internal marketing.
Right.
AKA culture.
Nailed it, Kelly. I think internal marketing is more important than external marketing.
100%.
Because
Absolutely.
your employees are ambassadors for your brand. And when they go out in the world and they represent the name, do they clean up after themselves? Do they treat people nicely? Do they something else kind of interesting? When you say negative things about Delta, passengers and, people like me come out of the woodwork to say that's BS. That's not my experience. I love Delta, which I happen to. There's another thing that I just thought of as we're sitting here talking, which is, I really didn't do that to get I wasn't trying to get diamond status. I just wanted to say I was a proud Delta flyer. I was honestly just doing basically a testimonial. And that I think is what's great about LinkedIn is it's frequently people will do stuff like that and they're not really expecting a reward. And
Well, we're in a world right now that all we do is hear negative, and then you go and because everybody knows I work with job seekers. You go, oh, I looked over on Glassdoor, it's all negative, but there's a few positives. Well, those people are going to put a negative comment to where they work until they leave, or the inside the company says, can you write some positives to make us look good? It goes back to being internal. When you leave the company, you can still say good things. I mean, I can't think of really any, well, maybe one or two, but I worked in a lot of places that I could just say, but I don't speak it. You want to still be able to say, yeah, I worked here. Yeah, they laid me off, but I learned a lot. Or, the positives. We're so used to saying the negatives. And, it goes back to the woman that you were talking to.
I really felt like
we're brought up to treat people equally. I don't care if you are the janitor. You are the same person as everybody else is. Right. And this is where our world is, all over the place.
To her credit, she was a sweet person by nature. You could just tell.
Oh, good.
She was, and a company that is able to hire and support a person like that, to unlock or just give them permission to be themselves that way. And again, and let's go back to Disney. Disney people are different. They are performers. And this is such a marvelous place for them to put their talent on display. I've got these little rules that I live by. I have them literally posted. And this is one of my favorites, which is go where you are appreciated, not just tolerated. And
absolutely.
And when you find a boss who digs your talents and who celebrates your talents and who goes out of their way to call attention to how they value you, oh my God, grab onto that belt loop and never let go. Yes. Because life is so much easier when people are like that have some measure.
That was my longest stint, because I used to move around the country all the time. I had that boss. Hello, Jose, wherever you are.
See, even now you have affection for that person, and that.
Absolutely.
Has this ever happened to you guys, where you really, really liked your boss, but for one reason or another, you wound up leaving, and then years later you went back to work for that person? Have you ever had that experience?
No.
I never went back and worked for them. I did reconnect with them for that exact reason, though. And I think, one of the things that I do tell any, CEOs or other C-suite that I've ever worked with over mostly the last decade, because I've been more in not just marketing, but in leadership development, is one of the high signs within internal marketing. When you have your good people go silent, something's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's like cue number one. And to kind of piggyback off of what you were just saying, people are more apt to go give negative feedback. And think about this. You go to a restaurant, you get crappy service, you had a hair in your food, whatever. You can't wait to get on Yelp or whatever and put a negative comment. But when you go have a great experience, and granted I do, but it's the marketer in me, because I'm like, I want you to know that I thought that your team is doing a great job.
God bless you, Kelly. That the fact that you do that is that I think that's going to come back at you. I mean, in a good way. That when you go out and you are unafraid about sharing good things about experiences.
The world needs more goodness. I mean, and positivity to each other. And the other part I wanted to say was, when in interviewing, I always loved interviewing people, fascinated by people. but I wanted every single person that left wanting to have that job because again, the best PR. And even when we let people go, because exiting or termination, however you want to say it, an exit strategy is very important. I've had people that I let go that I'm still connected with, and they thanked me for the process and for treating them with
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah.
Uh,
Every circumstance like that
yes.
can contain a silver lining, but you
Oh,
have to leave with class and an understanding of the long arc of a career. There's can I tell you an experience that I had that was about celebrating somebody? So I was at this company, and they had a triumph. They had a kind of a very successful um, product launch. But what we did not know was all of the bumps and grinds below the surface of this thing. The CEO got up in front of the room to announce this, the very successful product launch. And this is what he did. He says, "Now, you all know about the success of this product. I don't have to get up here and cheerlead how great it is and how wonderful we are. What I want to talk about instead is a moment where we almost met our doom. There was a data glitch that was going to torpedo this whole thing moments. I'm telling you, we were 30 minutes away from an absolute disaster. There was one person who stepped in and saved you all." You don't know this, but basically they prevented nuclear Armageddon. And you know what? I called this person literally with their child in their arms, their baby in their arms. And they spent 2.5 hours resolving this issue. And then he announced this person's name, and to a thundering applause. And this is the thing, is that sometimes success isn't about a great achievement, it's warding off evil. That in fact, one of the greatest things you can do is save everybody's bacon. And the victory party of the product launch was so much sweeter, knowing how close we all came to falling through the ice. And I don't think CEOs take enough advantage over calling attention to the things that might have happened.
Right.
right.
And that to me is great storytelling, is the fact that they had decided to package it that way. Towards, you all need to go and now thank Saint Janet of the data entry.
Love that. But
So
it's such an easy thing, right? I mean, because and I've
you'd
known,
think,
and it's not. I mean,
Yeah.
I've worked for some CEOs that seriously have zero understanding and are so disconnected and out of touch or tone deaf to their staff, um, because it does trickle down. And the CEO that I was, that I thought of right away when you said, "Have you ever recontacted after leaving?"
mm,
Um, and I left on good terms. I left because the capital markets division was going to close, and I was like, "Do I get another job or wait till I get laid off?" Because it was going to happen. Um, I adored him. He could not have celebrated more when I left, but he also taught me the power of failure. And I say
mm.
that because it's such a negative word, but it's part of life. And when, especially in the workplace. And I had taken over as VP of marketing for our US operations because the woman that had been in charge went and had twin boys, God bless her, and she decided not to come back. She wanted to be a full-time mom, God bless her.
Mm.
And so I was offered the position, and I was a little terrified because I had no idea how to run the department. And he was like, "Well, neither do I. So we're in this together." Well, something came up, and it was a big error. And I looked into it, figured it out, went to him and, said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know." And my exact words were, "I effed up." Um, and he said, and I gave the solution. "Here's how I think we can do this next time so we can avoid it." And he was like, "Well, great job. That's how I know you're doing your job, is because you're pushing the limits. And beyond the limits, there is failure. And that's part of the process." So him celebrating the error, if you will, and I only air quote it because it wasn't an error. It's not like I knew it was going to happen and just avoided it and let it fall. It wasn't identified until it occurred, and then fixing it. But he changed my philosophy, and that's a smart way to raise a team, because the creativeness about being in a safe, supported environment, you create a team that has creativity that will far exceed anything that you put fear and boundaries all over, and do have a place that doesn't feel safe. And you're right, it seems so simple, but really it's a rarity.
The environment of safety that you mentioned a minute ago is one of the primary tools of a creative department. You can't ask people to have nothing but good ideas.
That's
That
right.
doesn't work that way.
No.
They have to be
No.
shielded. They have to be protected, and the people, I mean, they have to be
Mhm.
protected. No, it's not that they're sorry, an animal just entered the room.
Okay, I got mine as my footstep, my foot.
Well, I spent, a good solid 30 years in advertising and in creative departments. And in those creative departments, the best results were freedom to fail.
Yes.
Mhm.
And what's more, by the way, Kelly, you did something very wise. You didn't try to shield the mistake. You went ahead and owned
Yeah.
it. If you're a boss, that's a dream come true, because
Mhm.
anybody that owns their mistakes is vastly more tolerable and worth cultivating than someone who hides that. But if you want to make sure that you have a dysfunctional department, there's nothing worse than punishing people for mistakes that they owned up to, because then they won't. Then they won't tell you when things have gone wrong, and then you've got a culture
Right.
that's just waiting to careen off the rails. But cultivating an environment of trust and safety is vital for creativity, because when people are in fight or flight or freeze mode, that part of the brain that is creative has shut down in
Mm.
favor of the more feral brain, which only is concerned with self-preservation. And therefore, again, to return to the idea that the best stories for me, the ones I look for, are the ones that are encouraging and uplifting, and try to say, life is, people aren't as bad as you're being told. That I think is part of an affectation that I adopted, because you have to be upbeat with creative people so that they won't fear the reaper when they walk into the office.
I want to make. Yeah, I was going to make two things regarding the creative part. That you're out of the box thinkers. You're going to. The only way you're going to be successful is to fail.
You have to,
because then you're going to say,
Right.
how can I fix it? Oh, well, actually, that didn't really fail, because now it gave me another idea to go this other way or this way. But having, as you said, the fear, the flight, and shutting down, it doesn't work in any department, in any realms of life.
Right.
And we have to get out of the fear, and that's up in our head, because we don't know. We don't even, most of the time, people don't even know. I mean, I know that when I used to be so afraid of heights, and now, I mean, I've jumped out of plane, I've jumped off of telephone poles,
Oh, yeah.
belayed from,
You're a better man than I am, jumping out of an airplane. That ain't gonna ever happen in my
I
lifetime.
was belayed, but it was just sort of why was I scared of? There's a John Hancock in Chicago. If anybody knows it, you go to the window and you look down.
Ooh.
Vertigo.
Going into the Empire State Building, I was scared to death, and now it's just like, what was I even scared of?
Did you get over that by aversion therapy, or was that how did you happen to graduate from that fear?
She jumped out of a plane.
Was that it?
Well, I jumped off the telephone pole before it was down in Mirabel. I finally became confident in myself. It was all about me.
Yeah.
I was holding myself back, and this is what I see, that people, how I look at people are afraid to be nice because they're afraid to be judged. People are afraid just to breathe because they're afraid to be judged. We all judge. I mean, that's just life.
Right. And
You know
being
what?
in
When
the,
we start treating people the way we want to be treated
Yeah.
and not judge them. We're going to see the best in everybody.
I had a
Amen.
boss who, oh, sorry, Kelly. I had a boss that used to be he used to run the most brilliant brainstorming sessions. And this was a guy. Can I just go off? I got a quick tangent. It's about IQ when it comes to brainstorming. Okay, so when people are spooked, that is, they feel like they're being judged, like you were talking about, their IQs go down about 15 points. And the reason is they've stopped thinking about the ideas they're supposed to come up with, and all they're worried about now is hierarchy, because they're scared of how they fit into the group, and they're terrified that they're going to underperform, and that terror and that fear produces old ideas that worked before, so that they won't be judged as deficient. Okay, so in other words, it by definition it's a failure because they're not coming up with anything new, and the purpose of the brainstorm was to come up with new ideas. So what this boss would do is he would say, listen, this is not a random collection of people. Each of you has been selected to be here. You have a right to be here. The group will benefit from your presence. Janet is here because what I have noticed about her is, and then he will go around the room and he will say, you are safe in this space. If you don't want to speak, you don't have to. You're not obliged to speak. What I want you to do today is focus on this. When somebody else has a good idea, react to it. Make it better. See if you can contribute some. What does it make you think of? None of us is as smart as all of us together. So don't worry if you don't start the ball rolling, but by all means, feel like you have permission to add, subtract, or multiply. Okay. Well, what happened was, in that feeling of safety and like you were allowed to be here and your presence was valued, people wouldn't have that same reduction in IQ. Instead, they would part of their brain that was the idea part would suddenly feel like it had permission to speak. And you can imagine if that person was working at a different agency, he'd take your people and beat them, or he would take their people and beat you, and then he would take his own people and beat you again. It's the secret of a great coach, a great football coach. I can take your players and beat you with them because they're getting more out of people, because they understand that fear is the mind killer, as they say in Dune. And it turns out it's absolutely true. And again, this is why I tell the stories I tell, is to just try to leave the commons better than I found it, by reminding people they're not alone. And in fact, people aren't as bad as you're being told. And not everything is a threat. Okay?
Right. So true. And just off a couple
life is not as
like,
we're on that awesome journey. Life is
sure.
not that ugly.
Sorry.
That's okay.
No, you froze up for me, so I'm sorry.
I'm just saying we're on this awesome journey. Life is supposed to be awesome. Stop looking for the negatives.
We need to be.
And trust me, life is a shitty time. It can be a shitty time. We can see the darkness.
It can be.
It can be.
Yeah.
But it's how you react to it, or understand that I'm all about being a phoenix. I've burnt down so many times in my lifetime. You would think that I'd be a lot tanner. Yeah. But you just keep on going through it and learning.
Hey, let me throw a tidbit out for you guys, which is sometimes if you really need a pick-me-up, I think the prescription is for you to try to pick somebody else up. So I'll tell you what I mean.
Amen.
So you're having a kind of a bad day and you're looking for a little bit of an aspirin tablet. Here's what you do. You literally write a letter of praise and or appreciation to somebody that you know. And you get the stamp and the envelope and everything. And if you might even think about decorating it, and you just say, I was thinking about you, and I remembered this thing that you did that was very positive, and it made me feel good. And I just thought, I wanted to remind you that I appreciated that. And just having it out there in the post office, like it's on its way, it improves your day. And the reason it does is because you recognize that does two things. It makes people feel good. So it's a little gift that you've done. And it especially makes you feel good that you've given a gift to somebody. It's these little gestures. And by the way, I don't know if I love getting stuff in the mail. And so I developed this habit watching this. There was this gal, she was an artist, and she used to do these crazy boxes and envelopes for people that she didn't even know. She would just randomly mail it to some dude, in Fort Lauderdale, and with, because no expectation, no return address, or if it was a return address, it was fanciful. It would be like from Narnia or something. And just having them out there in the ether, just knowing that they were going to be delivered, used to fill her with such joy. And I think I'm going to take a page out of her book.
I had a recent, I have lots of business coaches, but I have a business coach that said that every morning you send a text to somebody in your tribe, letting them know what you appreciate or what you know that you were thinking of them. Somebody who's you're not really that close to, maybe a business associate, and then just scroll through your phone, because we have lots of people we do not even talk to, and just hit it and send them a text. That person's going to come back and say, "Who are you?" And then you get that conversation going again.
The phone scroll, that's a good idea.
Yeah, but I mean, I would do the first two. It was just the scrolling, because I'm real good about getting rid of people off my phone. If you're not in my life anymore, I don't need you in my phone. If you're not on my social media, which hurts me, because maybe I should start connecting back with people that, the reason, the season, the lifetime. Yeah, those people do come back into your life for reasons.
I do think,
but it's always just about feeling positive, even in the darkest times, because you have that control.
Right. And I think it's that whole point of, all the way around. What's the connection there is it's gratitude, having gratitude for whatever the situation is. And there were so many good points that you all both made this in all of this, but Christy made a point which I loved, several of them, but one is when we say the word fix. I was always very careful with my team when I used the word fix. We need to fix that, or thanks for fixing that, because it's insinuated or assumed, which that's one of my least favorite words, that it was incorrect, and that's not always the case. And the secondary thing I wanted to say, as far as working with creatives and creating that safe space, the amount of fun that you have when your team trusts you, and you trust one another. Because my thing was always, hey, when we're in a, discovery, or we're in creative mode, there was no idea that was thrown on the table that was a bad idea. Because even the most silliest thing could lead to the most amazing places, right? Because your thought will spark something in me that will spark into something else. And watching that occur as a leader, watching the team in that space, to me, there's nothing more rewarding. And that is internal marketing, really, to a next level. But it's being that communication, and Christy, you and I talk about this so much, is about being the empathetic and compassionate leader. So it's so important, because it does lead to stories within your team of what's created for your business, what have you, that go far beyond than what you could have ever laid out to begin with. When you have people who are open in communication and feel safe, like that, to me, is priceless. And it is kind of a shame that there's no course that people can take to teach that, because you either are or you are not. Because I never took a class. I got my degree in global business management with an emphasis on marketing. There was nothing that taught me any of those things. I just treated people how I'd wanted to be treated, as when I was coming up, or when started in the workforce. But thankfully, I was blessed with a couple of really good mentors in my time, but also some super crappy people who, unfortunately, that's where we learn the most from, right? Are those ones that just truly were the worst, which is just life in general. The worst things that happen, the deepest, darkest places, do lead us to the most amazing places, and also create the most beautiful stories. And I think on one of my posts, I commented how on our call that we did before we booked you last year, that I cried. And of course, everybody who watches, it's like, oh, what a shocker, because Kelly's a crier. Um, but there's a beauty in that when someone can tell you a story that moves you, not just for, and Christy and I both say this a lot. Oh God, goosebumps to my core. But when it moves you to feel something so deeply, like that's a gift. Because you can't really teach that to somebody other than providing a safe space, because when people are vulnerable, because that is what it is too, is the vulnerability and the share, because you shared a very personal story about your dad,
Mhm.
and and that was just, I mean, I remember it. I have the chills right now. I have goosebumps just thinking about it, because it was so emotional, because we could feel what you were feeling, because it was just your truth.
Well, all his stories are that way.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
it
You
just
guys
and
know
it
us.
brings you into it brings you out of your head. Going
Yes.
back to when you do a story, do you research like, okay, well, how am I going to do this? What should I do? Or do you just sort of boom, it's there?
Well, there is a kind of there is a
Yes.
sort of a template, if you will. Um,
Yeah.
the basic thing that I will do is I will come across a really brilliant thought or a quote, and I'll try to imagine like what has happened to me that would fulfill that kind of quote. And I, this quote that I have, you can't see it; it's off camera, but it's the thing about the life is a shipwreck, but we have to remember to sing in the lifeboats. That the story that was attached to that sentiment was something that I was working in Hong Kong for 2 years, and we were taking an airline from Hong Kong to Kota Kinabalu in Malaysia, and there on this airline, this Filipino airline called Cebu Air. And we got onto this plane, and I'm telling you, it was rambunctious. These three flight attendants, two gals and one guy, and he was like a kind of Filipino Kevin Hart, but and then one of these gals was like model gorgeous, and the other one was this vivacious pixie, and they became a kind of show. Now, I don't think even Southwest wouldn't touch this because they got crazy. And
Oh,
what happened was we s- they said they made an announcement that they were not going to be serving drinks because it would take too long and it would interrupt the show. And so we're all going, "What?" And then they staged a full-on dating game. They went through the passengers and they selected this very cute gal and they brought her to the front. And then they had in the jump seats, they had three guys that were her possible dates sitting her backwards with their backs to her so that she couldn't see them, or it was some version of
Like
this.
the dating
And
game.
and it
that's
was the dating game. And then they
Yeah.
asked the most suggestive questions, and we were all hooting and laughing. And eventually they gave, she selected one of them and they gave them a date. And then it turned out that the reason they hadn't passed out any of the liquor was they gave all the liquor to them as their prize. And then,
oh
then
my
they were
gosh.
throwing out t-shirts and they would ask people to tell jokes and they staged karaoke. They literally had
What?
karaoke. And then, just to show how awesome they were, they did karaoke in four-part harmony. Now you're thinking, wait, there were only three of them. How did they do four-part harmony? The freaking co-pilot was singing along as the
My god.
fourth voice. Now I'm thinking Cebu Air is the greatest airline ever created. And I couldn't wait to get back on that plane, for the return flight, only to discover it wasn't Cebu Air. It was just them. It was just that little group of four. It wasn't airline policy. In fact, now that I look back on it, I'm going, yeah, no airline would
Oh.
approve this. They're handing out basically 2-liter bottles of tequila to this couple, you know, and but they were just spitfires. And what had happened was the pilot and the co-pilot had just said, yeah, absolutely, go for it. We're not going to turn you in. And everybody had the time of their lives. And I can tell you, I don't know how long that flight was because however long it was what it was. It was the show. And what I got out of that was that I just thought, oh, only down here would you get away with that stuff.
Yeah.
And in the end, it just so beautifully encapsulated, yeah, life is a shipwreck, but we must remember to sing in the lifeboats. They made our lives so much better just by having the creative spirit and not being afraid to just let it all hang out. I wish I could I remember some of these jokes they told. It was right on the edge of filthy. but
Those are the best
you know,
kind.
but what do they call it? Plausible deniability. You're like,
Yeah.
no, the dirt is in your mind, sir.
Yes.
Oh my God,
But
the passengers were having a good time.
But
That's the
everybody's
way to
so
do it.
offended nowadays, and that even goes to with you talking about Saturday Night Live, back at, like, and Don Rickles and all of those. People get
George
so
Carlin.
offended these days.
Have you
Yes,
noticed,
they're so funny.
I think what's happening, I think it's maybe happening less and less,
Yeah,
because I'm noticing that there are certain comedians that don't care. Like, they
yes,
don't
Exactly.
care. And when they don't care, you have no control over them.
that's right.
And that was the thing of Rickles' great secret was complain all you like. It's not going to slow me down. Not at all.
Yep.
Right?
And ironically enough, do you know who Don Rickles' best friend was? It was Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart and Don
Bob
Rickles were
Newhart.
best, and their wives were best friends. And it was
Yes.
just, when I found that out, I thought, of course, because Don Rickles was a very sentimental, sweet man. And so was Newhart. And
Yeah,
their wives
interesting.
got along. Rickles' best stories, by the way, were not the ones that he told on stage. It were the ones he
Oh, I'm
would tell in
sure.
interviews about his wife, which was just charming.
Uh-huh.
Oh my God,
Don't
they
you
were lovely.
remember just even like the okay, we're going sideways, but Carol Burnett's show? I mean, Harvey
There was a,
Korman, I mean, they would just like they would be cracking up because
they
they
were
had inside
there
jokes
was
and everything.
there was a lot of sort of ribaldry going on there that was barely disguised. And that was that was back in the day. I mean, we're all
Yeah,
dating ourselves right now, that Carol Burnett, but when you really had to pass, what do they call it? Standards and practices. Standards and practices. And if you said something the wrong way, that you would go afoul of the network censors. But they got away with it just because it was so much improv, in spite of the
right.
fact that it was strictly, I mean, it was totally scripted, but they were just on a tear. They just loved it.
Well,
I'm
and
I'm
SNL, wasn't I just watched the Chris Farley documentary recently, so it's funny that you even said SNL. Um, but sometimes the funniest skits were when the actors were trying not to laugh because
Yeah.
they were so tickled about what was happening. Because when you had a Chris Farley that would go totally off script or take the character to a level they weren't expecting, they couldn't, and that made it funnier
There
because,
was
oh my God, look, they're even laughing at themselves.
there's a sensation of safety that will happen when performers like each other, and
Yeah.
they will do that when they sort of love each other. And Phil Hartman and, oh my gosh, who was the name of the guy? Oh, you forgive me. There was Phil Hartman's was best friends with John Lovitz on Saturday
Mm.
Night Live,
Oh yeah.
and the two of them had come up through the Groundlings, I think, together in Los Angeles, and they just loved each other. And they would do these bits together where you could see it. You could see it
Yeah.
in the way that they acted. And if you remember back to the Beatles, one of the coolest things about the Beatles was how much affection they had for one another. Even after they had broken up, there was
Right.
still a kind of a love. And I think that part of the appeal of the Beatles was the fact that you could see the affection on stage. You know how old George Harrison was when that band started? He was 15.
I was
He
going to
was
say,
15.
I was going to say 16 or 17, but
That's
He
a
was
little
15
early.
years old. They went over to Hamburg to play at some Rathskeller somewhere at,
Yeah.
put their 10,000 hours in. Harrison got deported for being too young. That he was not allowed to be in the country without adult supervision. So he managed to make his way back. But that's how young he was.
Wow.
And there was a kind of a funny dynamic. They were very much his big brothers late in their career. And, that one of the things I talk about in my Storyfire course is the fact that sometimes disasters must befall you so that other opportunities will
Oh,
open up to you. Because
Absolutely.
if you're
100%.
working for a company that you're okay about and the money's good, it may be the thing that's standing in your way of truly flowering. And not a lot of people know that George Harrison was the author of some of the biggest hits just before they broke up. Like, I think the 2 or maybe 3 biggest hits were George Harrison's. They needed to break up for him to fully
Go forward.
fully, he had to get out behind George, or between Paul and John, because they were throwing a shadow over him.
Yeah.
And here's a couple of pieces of trivia you guys might get a kick out of. Do you know that George Harrison produced the movie Monty Python and Life of Brian? He produced that movie, and he produced a bunch of hits that were all very critically acclaimed. Yeah. And
so tell us about your course.
Yes. Yeah. My course, which I'm very proud of. It's for the moment, it's 18 video modules with exercises, and it's basically the distilled experience of storytelling that I gathered from 30 years in the advertising business. As you can imagine, in the ad business, you have to explain ideas. They are nothing but ether until you can bring them to life in people's minds. And so it encompasses everything from how to do better PowerPoint to how to go out and find stories, and what's the purpose of telling them in a way that you'll so internalize it sort of overcomes stage fright. And it's a very comprehensive video course that you can find at
that would be good for corporations. Not even not even just creative departments.
Definitely.
That would help executives. That would help just anybody who just talks to people, networking.
Yeah,
I was going to say my immediate reaction to that was like, CEOs need that course.
They do, actually.
Because those are usually the ones, and I say this as a marketing person myself, is they can get stuck in their own way of how to market their thing because they have a different relationship with it. And they can be the ones that are stepping in the way of the right story coming to life.
The CEO is the one who determines where we are going. And that vision for the future, the more compelling it is, the more that it enlists everybody as fellow, on the awesome journey together, the more that you can feel that, the more people will give you. They will run through walls for you if they sense that you care about them. But you're never in somebody you care about them simply by saying you care about them, any more than a comedian getting up on stage is going to make you laugh by telling you how funny they are. No, they have to show you. And the way that they demonstrate that is through the stories they tell. For example, the CEO gets up and says, I think we're all here to celebrate the triumph of this product launch, but can I just for a moment talk about how close we came to our, that's the kind of story.
You got to back up. You just froze.
Back up a little bit.
Oh, you froze.
The
punchline he was about to say, and then you froze.
Yeah. When somebody tells you how close we were, you all know that we won, but let me tell you how close we came to disaster. And that I want to tell you about this woman that saved you. And when you tell that kind of story, people, even that had nothing to do with saving, they feel appreciated because they think, oh, the CEO is noticing. They notice a lot. They have a sense of appreciation. They are generous in their praise. And you know who else could use this course is CFOs, because it isn't enough for me to tell you that the numbers added up correctly. I have to tell you what the numbers mean, and I have to tell you where the numbers are going. And just like a CEO, when a CFO can do that effectively, they are worth a lot of money because they become persuasive about what to do with the money. They become persuasive about, we are going to need to tighten our belts here. And I don't want to hear you complain about it. I need you to see that that is part of a success strategy that will benefit us over the long run. And a CEO.
He's freezing.
Yeah.
Oh.
A COO
has to be.
Yes. COO.
Yeah.
The COO has to be able to explain why they're taking. I don't know how much when you lost me. But
how do people get a hold of that? How do people get a hold of getting this course?
Yes, so they can go to www.storyfire.net. It's spelled just like it sounds, storyfire.net. And they can just look me up also, and I'll be happy to. I'm easy to find because I spell my name so weird,
Right.
NealFoard. But I will tell you that if a CEO were to adopt the lessons of this, it would be worth multiple thousands of dollars to them. And so
Amen.
it's actually incredibly cheap, this course. But the best part of it is that I'm going to be perpetually adding new modules, which if you buy the course, they'll be you can see them.
Oh,
And I will be having periodic live events where we can ask questions and talk about specific cases that
so
people are having.
how are you promoting it? Besides, Kelly and I are going to be blasting it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm very happy that you are, but I'm also I'm doing pretty much all the videos that I'm putting out lately have it at the end of the video, and
Oh, good.
many
Okay.
of the videos that I'm doing are kind of dance along the edge of what the course is. Um, I'll give you one principle, in fact, from the course that I
Love it.
bang on about all the time, which is life gets so much easier when people like you. And a story is a magnificent way of creating a human connection with somebody. So they don't see you as somebody trying to sell you something. They see you as somebody on the journey with them, trying to help them with, by adding a new skill.
I love it.
No, totally.
And again, it's
Gee, it sort of
so
resonates to my business.
yeah.
Because I'm thinking, even my job seekers, this would be
Oh,
something just to
100%.
absolutely.
themselves.
The job seekers can bet. Oh my God. Yeah.
I was
for
just
sure.
going to say, I don't want to say that we're pigeonholing that this course is only for CEOs, CFOs, and COOs.
Everybody.
But everyone,
Everybody.
anyone who's in this and learning your own story. I think a lot of times, because I've taken some other courses, and I won't name them here, but other very high dollar ones, because they're fascinating of what it breaks down and what it gets out of you. And it's like,
Yeah.
man, I couldn't have made this happen without this. So I love coursework like this. I think it's so important. And it's the gift that keeps on giving, because it is once
There's
you
a
kind of get that secret, for your own story, your brand, what have you, you got nowhere else to go but up.
there's a
Well, believing in yourself.
Yeah.
LinkedIn did
You know?
a recent survey among business leaders, and I think it has more than 1,000 for what were the skills that were being in the most demand in 2024. And
Hmm.
not ironically, the number one skill was communication. That people who were good communicators were at the top of the list of promotable and hireable, because when you can explain ideas clearly, succinctly, and with a certain emotional appeal, I can train you to do the rest of this, but that is incredibly valuable. And when you are out in the world, no matter what you are doing, if you are able to tell a story that will not only explain something but make a human connection, you are money. And ironically enough, what's bringing this on is AI, because as AI becomes a more important tool for business, it becomes vital that you own the last part of what that can't do. It can't just
Right.
automatically tell a story and communicate succinctly and apropos to the subject. And
It doesn't give the emotion.
That's
That's
right.
the whole thing.
and
You need the emotion.
do.
You need to, when you're telling a story, the person, they need to feel it.
Yeah.
Always.
I'll give you a great example, Christy, from the course that I cite, which is that when somebody's interviewing for a job, they're going to ask you, well, tell me about yourself. And
Yeah.
seizing that moment to distinguish yourself, make yourself different, is fantastic. When I was a creative director in New York, this young woman came in, and I'm a sort of late stage boomer / Gen Xer. And so I said, well, tell me about yourself. And she said, well, there was that one time when I was an illegal alien in Denmark. What? What? Yes, I was studying architecture in Denmark and Copenhagen, and my student visa ran out. And I literally had to lay low for about 6 weeks there. Okay, now the difference between that and I studied architecture in Copenhagen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If she says
She caught your attention.
she got my
And you
attention,
remember
she
it.
positioned herself as a slightly slightly mysterious figure for a couple of minutes. But look at the contrast, the difference of your interpretation of that information.
Yep.
Okay. If she were to just say, I studied architecture in Copenhagen. Okay. That's interesting. It's a fact.
Mhm.
I have that on your resume.
Thank you. If I'm having a bad day, it might almost come off like you're thumping your chest, like you're bragging a little
Yeah.
bit. But
Yeah.
the contrast when she says, well, I was an illegal alien once in Denmark, all of a sudden, I want to know more.
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
tell me. And if she wants to, she can flavor that with all kinds of, I hung out on a houseboat, on the polder, right? In other words, it's an entree for conversation. And I find her
Absolutely.
interesting in the first 10 seconds. I find her interesting. We did wind up hiring her, by the way, because she did everything that way. How you do anything is how you do everything. So that to me is like a really, really good example of some of the things that the Storyfire course is about. It's like, let's just look at life as an opportunity for you to make human connection. What's the best tool for that? It turns out words are pretty good. And the best way to use the words is to do them in the form of stories, because stories are the human operating system. We've been doing it for 30,000 years. That's, by the way, why I call the course Storyfire, is it's sitting around the campfire swapping stories.
Well, it's also embracing your own story.
Yeah. Amen.
People, I'm all about I dance with my skeletons, because I spent my whole life in and out of, not my whole life because I'm still here, in and out of depression, of being judged and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, judge me for all you want. I got some great stories and I can share them so other people can understand. One, they're not alone. Two, they're looking outside of their head and saying, hey, I can do this. But Neal, I'm digging this because I've got to go into your, yes. Yep.
Is that backwards?
Yes, it is.
Or are you ready to?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Remember before.
Do I need to do something? I'm sorry, but it says remind people they are not alone.
Yeah.
And
we're not.
the fact that your story, you're 100% right, Christy. To master your own story is a kind of an interesting therapy.
Oh, huge therapy.
Right.
Huge
right.
therapy.
Because you can frame your experiences in such a way that they benefit you, or you can frame your experiences so that they create anxiety and trauma.
Right.
And what is very important is kind of a theme that we've been banging on about all during this podcast, which is you have to see the silver lining in things. You have to give yourself permission to see that even the bad things that happened to you, you learned from. And in fact, many of the mistakes you made came with more dividend than if you had succeeded.
Did you just explain my whole life? I mean, every negative, I can literally tell you the positive I got out of it. And people are just,
yeah, there you go.
Always.
How can you find a positive in what happened to you? Well, because this.
And I want to tell you a story.
I was able to do it.
I want to.
You can always go through it.
See, there you go. And now, do we have time for a story?
Yes, go ahead.
I've done a YouTube on it, but I just love this tale because to me, it's a really, really good example of a person who infected me with the positivity that wound up taking a bad day and turning it good. So I had this old 1966 Mustang with no hood. And because it had no hood, whenever there was rain or mist was too much, it would fiddle with the electrics. And so I come out in the morning in my one suit, and I was making no money and desperate to go from North Pasadena down to Redondo Beach in my stupid car. And all of a sudden I go out there and it won't start. And it just gives me that, that sickening, that's like all it gives you. Okay. So this was back before cell phones and back before the internet. And so I had to go through the yellow pages and find somebody to help me repair the car cheaply. And I'm calling from place to place, and people are going to charge me $100 just to tow me in. And that ain't going to work. So finally, I find this little tiny yellow pages ad for Balkan Auto Repair Garage Business. It's roughly like that. It was some kind of nonsensical name. And I called them up and I say, yeah, can you fix this? And they go, sure. And I go, could you tow me in? How much would it be to tow me in? Oh, nothing. I'll send my father. So I go, okay. Bonus. All right. This 90-year-old guy shows up. He's got this brilliant hair, this brilliant head of, it looks like Elvis, but it's jet white. It's just completely white. And He's about 90, and I'm pretty sure he's new to tow trucks, and the truck itself is missing some parts. And I'm having to help him hook the car up because he's kind of not doing it right. And so in the process of helping him, my suit just gets mangled and greasy. But he's so sunny and upbeat that that getting my suit wrecked would have sent me into a fury if not for the fact that he was just so happy-go-lucky. So we jump in the tow truck together, and he's got some Armenian folk song playing on the radio, and he's dancing in his seat, and he's trying to get me to dance, and he keeps laughing, going, ha, 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 young man, old car, old car, young man. Okay, whatever. Okay, you're having a good time, so I can't help it. So we get to the garage, and 4 generations of his family go to work on this car like a pit crew, and everybody has that same upbeat demeanor. The woman that's running the place, and she crossed that desk from me, and I swear, she thinks I'm there to steal from them. She's going, they tell me it's very bad. Really? They say it's going to be very expensive. Oh, here's how. The tow is free, so they can gouge me. She says, it's going to be probably about $90. I'm like, fantastic. Okay, so I'm like, oh, okay. All right, $90. All right. So everybody was so sunny that they had infused me with the joy of life. And I was determined to get a smile out of this gal. So there I'm waiting, she's doing her paperwork, and the stapler's going, and the staple remover's going, and this toothpick would go from one end of her mouth to the other, depending on how much work she had to do. And so I'm telling her every joke I know, but every time I tell her a joke, it doesn't get a laugh. It gets a look like, you do know I'm trying to work here, Okay. But the best I could get out of her was she goes, remember, we close at noon. You have to be out of here by noon. I'm like, well, I have no control over that. Okay. So, but I'm still going. And at one point, I took her stapler and I made it into a puppet. And I'm going, we close at noon.
That's fabulous.
She's like a just in very quick order. And they bring it to the front, and they've steam cleaned the engine bay. And it's magnificent. And then she has a couple of words with the mechanic, and then she comes back. She says, it's going to be more than I told you. And I'm going, oh, here's where they get you. She goes, it's $94. So I'm like, in ecstasy. So I whip out my checkbook, because this was the days of checkbooks. And I'm
Right.
looking for who to make it out to. And that's the first time I notice behind her is a big sign. And I mean 3 feet by 4 feet that says no checks. And I'm thinking, oh no. And they close at noon, right? They're going to close my car. So I look into her humorless eyes for some sense of mercy, of which there's none. And just at that moment, when I don't know what's going to happen, the old man comes in with his beautiful head of white hair, and he's holding a little baby with the identical hairdo, just in jet black. And I lock eyes with the child, and the baby goes like this, huh? And then it squeals in delight. And the old man suddenly gets very serious. And he goes, he knows you from before in the other life. And the woman behind the counter says, well, if he knows you, it checks okay. So then just at that moment, as they're literally about to close the gate on me, and I'm getting in my car to go, she says, hey, we're closing for lunch. You hungry? And I turn, and she gives me this big smile. And I'm like, yes.
You won. You got it.
It was the old guy's upbeat, fun energy had taken an awful, occurrence. It turned it into a magnificent day where I had lamb pastries with this family of Balkan auto repair people. It was fantastic.
And that has to do with the energy.
The energy.
I mean, if you've
right,
got a good
100%.
energy, and you're around somebody who's bad energy or not in a good place, you want to give them your good energy because you're feeling so good.
Yeah. Even if people are cutting you off in traffic, make sure you're the one that lets them in.
I'm a big believer now that there's a reason why. It goes back. We don't know what is happening with them. or I'm being saved from something happening to
You know
me.
what? Hey,
Like
you never
a
know.
car crash. My faith is strong. You don't know if God's going,
You never know.
this crap's going to be happening. So you're going to slow down and
That's
you're just going to be patient in my time.
Yes.
Well, this is, as always, Kelly, this has been great.
Yes. I mean, we say this with all of our guests, but I mean, it's because it's true. We could continue to talk for hours.
I
But
know.
you do, I mean, that was such a great way to give an example of storytelling. I pictured the whole scenario occurring.
Yep.
The guy with the fabulous silver hair and the baby with the same style jet black hair doing, I'm like, I saw all of it and see, and there's a skill in that and just the beauty of sharing it. And then there's, of course, a deep life lesson in there because it is all about the energy and how we choose to respond to people around you. Because there was enough positive energy that her negativity didn't take over. It just sort of added to the joy of the overall situation. You just went with it, and beautiful. I mean, so yeah, I just one last time for everyone, do connect with Neal on LinkedIn. Check him out on social media, storyfire.net, like everything else that we on other episodes. I will include all of the links in the comments as well as in the post promos. Please do check it out. Check out his coursework, so you can tell stories as well too. And like Christy was saying, with what she does is understanding your own story,
Mm.
and then how to put that together. I think it's something that applies to everyone. Granted, I'm a nerd on stuff like this, so my feeling is like everybody should take this course
They
because
should.
storytelling is just a lost art. People are
Thank you for
too
that plug.
funny. You're welcome.
I really
But it's
appreciate that.
true. I mean, I mean it because I think people were so used to instant gratification with so many things that people don't take time to really listen to the story like we just did. Because I guarantee Christy had a very similar vision happening in her head, but maybe a little bit different. But we went on a journey with you in this story and got lost in it. And we don't do that enough anymore.
I know we're just about to go, I guess, but I just want to
Oops, we can't hear
reinforce.
you.
We lost.
Oh, sorry. I just want to
Yeah.
reinforce something both of you had said before about your own story. It really is a terrific thing for you to master the telling of your own tale, both in little things that happen to you and in the general sweep of your life. Because once you have that down and you are interpreting it positively and you're seeing it a certain way, it does change your own energy about yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
And if
Absolutely.
there's one thing that I could leave everybody with, and that is when you are telling the story of your own life, don't make yourself the hero of the story.
Mhm.
You are on a journey and you have been influenced in very positive ways and in sometimes negative ways by other people. And when you can celebrate the people that have had a good effect on you, it does a couple of things. The first and the most important is it reminds you to have gratitude for the people that have come into your life and helped you. And that is a powerful positive energy for you to remember all of the people that helped you overcome challenges and helped you on the way to successes. And the second thing is when people hear you spread that generosity of spirit, when they see that when you are reflecting on your own story, that it often contains praise for other people, they like that. They think highly of you because they recognize that you see the reality of life, which is that when you're on the journey, we're all in this together. And it's very generous and sweet natured for you to acknowledge that other people have helped.
Love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
Well, even if you, I mean, again, I've had some shitty things happen to me, but I can actually thank them for what happened to me
Mhm.
because that's part of my forgiveness.
Yep.
And then growing from it and pulling it into the positive. And that's why, I share the stories because, and people are like, I can't believe you're sharing this story. Why? It's my life and I'm not alone. Other people, but it's about the forgiveness of the negative and going forward. So Kelly, we got to wrap up.
Yes, we do. Neal, thank you again so much for being with us. And I'm grateful, here's an example of the story. It worked out the way it was supposed to because your coursework is done. We wouldn't have talked about that at the beginning of the year. So
Turned out to
everything
be a
will-
gift for me. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. And I really appreciate those hardcore plugs there. You guys are the best.
No, I'm definitely gonna add that into my
Yes.
job thingy.
Yeah, I love it
So
for so many reasons. Yeah, and we'll
Well,
definitely
I'll
pull those
send you a
extras
discount
out
code.
too. Yeah,
sounds
so
good.
thank you everyone for joining us today. And again, we will include the links to Neal's contact as well as his coursework in the comments, as well as the post promo. And we look forward to seeing everyone next Tuesday at 1:11 p.m. Eastern time. And kind of as Neal alluded to just a little bit ago, because remember, we're all on this journey together, and together we do make it awesome. Have a great day, everyone.
Hold on.